Hey y'all, I'm Erin Haynes, the host of The Amendment, a brand new weekly podcast on gender, politics, and power, brought to you by the 19th News and Wonder Media Network. You've probably heard the news that this election year, our democracy is at stake. On The Amendment, I'm breaking down what that actually means, specifically for the marginalized folks who depend on our democracy the most. This is a show that dives past the headlines and gets clear on the unfinished work of our democracy. Listen to The Amendment now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Hillary.
I'm Lark.
And I'm Jessica, and welcome to Hearsay, where we deep dive into the cultural moments that live rent-free in our heads and probably yours too. And today, y'all better have my money. I'm being so serious.
Don't act like you forgot.
I'm staring at a table. It's just a laptop and a knockoff Stanley water bottle. There's no money here. But in all seriousness, for real, we are talking about paying Black women, which is why Lark is asking for a half check. I'm asking for a full check. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
that's
being so
funny.
silly.
That's funny.
Stepped on it too fast.
Just like I can only celebrate half of Black History Month.
Yes.
I can
she's
only
asking-
get half of my wage. I have to find the
You're
median.
half of equal pay.
Yeah.
And the women half will
It's
kick
only
in.
right.
And then I'll go over 100. But yeah, we are talking about paying Black women what they're owed because women are not equally valued. So we're going to talk about paying Black women specifically through the lens of sports, Lark and Hillary's favorite things, but is such a relevant thing right now, especially with WNBA season in full swing, with the definite popularity increase with March Madness this past year in women's basketball and women's sports in general, highlighting all of the glaring disparities between the sports. So while I want to talk about that, and we usually kiki-ha-ha, we are all women here, and I figured it could be like a rage session. Talk about,
I love that.
what bothers you? And like, when did you realize that like, emotionally and factually, like your work was not equal to the same degree as men or as white people and also men?
I feel like most people, I was never told, like I wasn't taught about the wage gap or that in hard numbers you will lose almost $1 million in your lifetime, but definitely had women and especially Black women mentors tell me like you kind of have to be on your shit a little bit more. You got to be above and beyond, some of the respectability politics stuff we've talked about before of how you assimilate and show up in the workplace is really going to make a difference, which is a shame that conversation ever needed to happen in the first place. But I do feel in that regard, I was warned, I think, a little bit more than some of my other Black friends based on our like colloquial conversations.
For sure.
And so I think I came into the workforce ready to negotiate. I'm a solid millennial, ready to negotiate, and talk about that and be on alert about asking all my white men peers what they were making. I was lucky my first job out of college to be close friends with a lot of the people I worked with, which were a lot of white men. And we all talked about what we made, and made sure during our relative review cycles, to stand up for each other and to share what we were being offered. But not everyone has that opportunity or chance. And it's just, it's so disheartening. It's anger inducing, like you said, that no matter what, we're still going to have this discourse, this conversation about who's worth what and who's earned what. We don't say earned in National Women's Law Center because you haven't earned to be underpaid because you're Black. Like that's insane. And it's just turns into the worst vibes, this fake argument to blame everything else but misogynoir, that you're not paying people because they're Black women and you hate Black women. So
because we're not even talking about like the actual work itself.
Right.
It's literally the person doing the work.
yes.
And because you're a woman, you're not going to get this money for the work, even if no matter what the work is.
Yeah.
And that's insane.
Insane. And we see it like at every level, right? Like it doesn't get better when you're older or have more degrees or
The
in
gap's
what
still
industry.
there,
Yeah,
regardless.
it's still
and the line keeps
till you die.
moving.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your job is.
No. So it
Yeah.
it's not about that.
Which we tell people all the time. There's a lot of wage gap deniers out there, and they always say,
And they're not all men.
The market,
No.
no,
but they're all in our mentions, I will say.
Yeah.
They're not
They
all men,
all
but they
are.
are in our men.
The market pays you what you're worth.
Yeah.
And it's like the market does not do that. The market's not a free and fair market, by the way. But yeah, it's funny, Jessica, at the start of this question, I was thinking about it, and obviously I'm white. The first thing I thought about were my parents. My dad's a professor and my mom was a teacher her whole career at the New Jersey School for the Deaf.
Oh, wow.
And their pay, which I knew I would became kind of keenly aware when they got divorced, right? Like when, there's a difference in pay and your parents split up, then there's who's going to pay for what? And all, I got way into the money in a teenage way that is not awesome. But at the time, I just remember thinking, my mom works so hard, so hard. And then she makes so much less because we value these levels of teaching differently.
Because your mom, I'm assuming, knows ASL.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So technically knowing a whole other language.
Right. And she has a master's degree. She
is helping a very underserved sector,
Right.
but being paid less than your dad.
Right. The other piece of it is that she would do extra teaching.
Yeah.
So she would also teach parents who needed to learn ASL. So she'd teach hearing people ASL. And then she also would teach ASL at the same college where my dad worked as an adjunct and get paid, nothing.
Oh my
because
God.
adjunct professors never. And so there's so much gendered stuff in that.
Yucky.
But as I was sitting here thinking about it, I kept thinking about the NBA and the WNBA where the work is the same.
Literally.
But we decided which one we value more. And
then we're just yeah.
And right.
That's
And then we say the market wants that. And that's not the case. It's in fact,
no.
Yeah.
It's where is the money and where is the power and where are we welcoming men in?
Right.
Where are we
Choosing to put the
not
money.
welcoming women in because
To
family.
quickly pivot kind of to sports just for a second. It's when Lark tried to watch March Madness at a bar in DC that was offering drink specials based on March Madness, and they were not doing it for the women's
This is your
game.
moment.
Yes. Blue Jacket in Navy Yard, DC, on my list. It's my life's work to take them down.
And so when you said that and just talking to y'all, it made me go to my parents who are avid sports watchers. But, before March Madness, I hadn't really seen my parents watch women's sports. And so I asked both my parents, and my mom was usually the commentary was trash on women's sports. Otherwise, though, I like women's sports. We'll watch definitely at least the final games of both.
Invest in it.
Yeah, exactly. But she's it was literally just the commentary, and also some channels don't show it. This, that,
It's
and
hard
the
to find
other,
it.
which is so crazy because it made me go and talk to them because I never asked myself because I just didn't watch sports in general.
Right. You're not the
You're an equal opportunity.
I'm an equal opportunity.
sports.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Ball go across court, field.
But now you're
whatever.
in. You're
But now I'm learning,
Yeah.
and I'm no, but actually, why don't we watch things equally? Because it's literally the same thing.
Well, and now the discourse, like you said, the whole thing this year was everyone can name women college basketball players and no one can name a male college basketball player, right?
True.
The women were the coolest thing. They were as talented. Their games were more exciting to watch, blah, blah, blah. All of that is true. But we still are having these weird conversations of where the male-dominated sports world is telling us, you did it. Here's this. They're stars. They're popular. Maybe they're getting top NIL
All their
deals.
journeys are sold
But we
out.
have season premiere of WNBA games not shown on TV. That's someone streaming it on Twitter that 2 million people watch. So we're still doing that. We're still having their
I think
salaries.
it was the preseason still, but
but it's stars.
But there were
It's stars,
200,000
right?
people on a live stream.
Yeah,
right.
that's nuts. And then we have all of their most, I should say, of their state of WNBA stadiums are not equipped to handle the fans that they now have. So they're now moving
in DC.
all their games in DC and
Mm-hmm.
Chicago. They're all moving their games to where the men play, which, hey, hear me out. What if it was the same? What if we had equal?
Yeah.
What if we had equal places
The audience
to play?
is there, right?
Because thinking about at least in DC, the DC stadium, which has had its own kerfuffle this year, but is accessible technically by every metro line.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very, very accessible.
It's in the center
very
of DC.
central.
Literally the center of the city.
Versus the women's stadium was, was it in Southeast?
Yep.
And like Southeast
Yeah.
is very inaccessible by metro.
It's not close.
It's literally separate but equal.
Yes,
But it's like,
and it's also, if you build it, they will come. The women's soccer team in DC had this similar thing. They had a stadium out in the, well, it was the middle of nowhere to be because I never leave the city limits, but it was not accessible to public transit.
I mean, they've had two very far places.
Yes.
One way out in Leesburg and the other way up in
Leesburg?
Yeah. And one in Germantown.
Yeah.
Like,
that was the closest they got.
and they were also like
another Audi
fields for lower levels of boys
Yes, they were
sports.
not like professional.
Yeah, they weren't professional level fields.
They started having a couple like friendly games at Audi Field where DC United, the men's team, plays. And lo and behold, they sell out. Oh, everyone wants to come see them.
Yeah.
And they realized how much money they could make having their games at Audi Field.
Right.
And now guess what? All their games are at Audi Field. Every game this season, they've broken, it's been a top attendance record.
Which Navy Yard isn't super accessible, but at least it's where all the stadiums
Metro accessible.
are.
It's metro accessible. And it's, you've made it equivalent with the other
It's next to the
sports
national
teams.
stadium.
That's what I'm saying. It's where other stadiums are. It's where
the
things
men's
are,
team
where
plays.
communities
Like,
are being invested in.
And I feel like we have these people making these base takes, still trying to hold on to this like women's sports, are still not as good. And especially with basketball, you're mostly talking about Black women. Like you're literally trying to cling on to,
which is the whole
point.
And that's why with like Caitlin Clark, it's like now it's like, oh my God, Caitlin Clark is only getting paid this much. And it's like, yes,
so
and
are
all
all the
the
Black
other
women.
Black players that have been playing for years. Also, of all the people that have been advocating for this for years.
Right.
Why was Brittany Griner in Russia in the first
Right. Like
place?
people are not making that
even though she's been
cognitive
playing
choice.
for years.
Right. Yes.
Like, I'm glad it's finally happening, that we're talking about it in basketball, and it's almost sitting because we talked about it in soccer, we talked about it in tennis, we're talking about it in basketball now. But it's still like, we cannot just be like, Caitlin Clark's not getting money, so something's wrong. It's like, no, we need to talk about how the same financial security has not been given to Black women as has been given to the Black men and all of the men in the NBA.
Right.
And that has consequences.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, I can't have 3 houses, I can only have 2, but like legitimate.
It's your
like,
life.
Yeah. It's your job.
Yes.
And
it's
because we live in a capitalistic
family
society, our jobs are really important for literally everything.
Survival.
Yeah. Well, and just like it irks me. I love that there's so many new fans and are welcome and are like, yes, let's join this fight. Let's do it. But similar to every other movement and fight, like you got to do your research. You got to listen to the history, right? Like Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, Dawn Staley, like all of these Black women have been doing that. They started the league. Like this work is not new. It's not something that's like just now shocking. Everyone knows, everyone who's been involved with the league, who's played in the league, who has watched the league knows that it's not new, and it's beyond just pay too. Like it's so sad to see that it mirrors again at every single level. They're not getting the same pay. They're not getting the same equipment and circumstances. They're not getting the same sponsorships. And even with NIL, it's still not the same. You can make your NIL.
Do you want to define that for people?
Oh, yeah. What? Name, image, and likeness. Recently, the NCAA and Supreme Court ruled that college athletes can make money off their name, image, and likeness. Notoriously,
because before they could
no
not.
money for that.
That's
Schools
a whole
can
other
make.
beef.
You can sell jerseys. Private companies can
even though
sell
like
all this stuff.
2% or less of people that were playing college sports were going on to professional sports, and we're finally making somewhat of an income versus except in women's basketball. No, they weren't.
Right.
But in college, you could not be paid. Like, because you were a student, that was your pay. And you had to be treated completely equally. You couldn't get any extra treatment, any extra money, any extra resources. Even though you didn't have time to study, you weren't actually getting an education.
You couldn't work.
Your
practice schedule and being a student, you can't make money any other way. The school, the world is making tons.
Millions.
Like college sports money is sickening if you look it up. It's
especially
nuts.
in southern schools.
Yeah, and so or just big. If you're at a big basketball school. If you're at South Carolina, if you're at if you're at UConn or something like that. So everyone thought, this is going to be the bastion of equality, right? Everyone can get the deals that they want, and I will say big brands especially. I'm thinking like Gatorade, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, even like the Curry brand. They have stepped up and made it clear that their choice is to promote women athletes and to do that. But
Right.
that is beyond your pay as your job. Like that's like your side hustle. Like you also should be paid the same for your job.
Right.
And it's like you should get revenue sales, a percentage of revenue sales from jerseys as a professional. Like women, the WNBA does not get that. You should have the same like tax options. Like they're not even allowed to like bargain over the same things that the men's league are. Like there's all these things that are like tucked in as, think of it as like your benefits package that they're not allowed to get because they're women.
Well, and also like more broadly, and we saw it this year with the draft, but like there aren't enough WNBA teams.
Yes.
The league hasn't been allowed to grow because people have refused to invest in it. And that is like tamping down what salaries could be and what, you know, like the competitiveness. Like it's too hard for players to stay on teams, so they like lose bargaining power that way.
Right.
Because there aren't enough teams. I just find, the WNBA is such a good
microcosm.
Like it's just one
of
the many
it's
pieces.
It's the ecosystem
that spell
shows,
out the way pay Black women. And like don't even get me started on like unpaid labor.
Black women in the league are having to do that unpaid labor, right? They're having to do the interviews. They're having to be on their social media saying, oh yeah, this is crazy. They're having to watch this discourse, get in with, you know, I'm thinking of like Asia Wilson and like Dawn
Staley having to talk about trans women and trans people in sports.
To carry the torch continually while you're still being underpaid and compared to men and white women. Yeah, it's... Oh, I'm sweating, you guys. I'm getting fired up.
I told you we're having a rage fest.
Yeah. And you were right, you know?
Yeah.
There's so much about sports that tells you women are second all the time.
Oh, like how they name the teams?
Yeah. So like the WNBA and the NBA, but like the W is extra. The thing for me with tennis is that when they do Grand Slams, the men's final is always the culminating last event and the women's final is the day before. Even though the women's final, as we know from many things now, is garnering more viewership because it's better. So it's like there's still this thing that says this is the actual end and best part. And I've heard that the NWSL has thought about rebranding. And I think they should just be the National Soccer League. Yeah. And then just like drop the W and screw MLS.
Yeah.
That's my...
Because it's already... MLS is different. Yeah. Just be the W. I mean, things are getting better in terms of the wage gap for Black women, but we've definitely got a long way to go. I'm glad people are bringing attention to things like the WNBA salaries and how whack they are and the way that brand and sponsorship deals are allocated between Black women versus white women. But we definitely want to dig a little deeper with some people who have firsthand knowledge, which is why we are going to be talking to Terri Carmichael Jackson, Executive Director of the Women's National Basketball Players Association, which is the WNBA's union, and two iconic WNBA players, Aliyah Boston and Alysha Clark, who, on top of being incredible athletes, are both key figures in union player leadership. I will be living out my sports reporter dreams, and I can't wait. I am over the moon to be here with three legendary Black women. Terri Carmichael Jackson, the ED of the WNBPA, Aliyah Boston, a forward for the Indiana Fever and the primary representative for her team in the WNBPA, and Alysha Clark, a forward on the Las Vegas Aces and the newest member of the union's executive committee. Today, we are talking about equal pay for Black women and the way that the conversation has ramped up in general around equal pay for Black women, but specifically around women's basketball. Let's jump right into it. Alysha, I'm going to start with you. So you got drafted in 2010, officially got into the league in 2012. I'm wondering what you were told about the pay for the WNBA, which is majority Black, before you entered, and kind of did what you know alter your experience of trying to get into the league?
Yeah, so when I was coming into the league, at the time, there wasn't as much talk around the pay, honestly, just because it was like a standard. That's what it was. And everybody knew it. And so it was more so like the opportunity and how hard it was going to be to even make a team in this league. And when I came in, it was a very heavy veteran league. And so I knew coming in, I was going to make, whatever the minimum was at that time. I think, Terri, you can probably correct me, but I think it was like right around maybe 50,000 or less, honestly. So you just knew that's what it was going to be. But there was a sense of like pride if you could make such a hard league and you could stick and be here regardless of the pay, because the best of the best played in this league. And so for me, it was just like, you knew what you were going to get. What you were going to get is what you were going to get. And, good luck trying to make a team. And, you hope that you can have at least a fair chance to do so. But yeah, there wasn't much talk around pay, just because it was almost like a hush hush thing. Like, you don't talk about the pay that, these players are making. It's a known thing, and you don't talk about it.
That's so interesting to hear, because I think a lot of people think, in their, what we consider like a normal 9-to-5 job that happens. Like, we talk a lot about pay transparency and how talking about your salary with your coworkers or colleagues can help close the wage gap. But I think a lot of us who are not in professions like the WNBA would think that's not the same. So it's so interesting to hear that it's the same for you all as well. And Aliyah, you are a player who I think a lot of people probably credit with the boom of popularity and kind of the test case of all of the brand deals you secured and transitioned into the league with from college, coming out of the NIL class. So I'm wondering how your prep into the league differs from Alysha's story.
Yeah, so for me, obviously we had NIL. And so that was the conversation. The deals you make, the money you get off those deals, that was what was emphasized all the time. And I remember when I had my decision to make, because I could have returned to South Carolina for one more year, the first thing they would say was, you're going to make way more money in college. And that was like what they always said. It would be like, why don't you just come back? I guarantee you can make this amount of money to go. Like, I'm lowering whatever I was doing right now at South Carolina to go to the league. And it was so crazy, because I would always try to fight back, because I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, I feel like it is something that I think they just wanted to say to honestly discredit what was happening in the W and the growth that's to come. Because I mean, when you think about it, like, I would tell people all the time, like, my paycheck is basically my cost of attendance. Like, NIL deals or brand deals I do now in the pro, like, those still come. Like, that is simple. But if I'm looking at what I'm bringing home every month or every 2 weeks compared to what I did in college, I am making way more money here. Okay. Like, my cost of attendance checks was it was not that. And I always thought it was funny when people would say, you're going to make more money, you're going to lose money going to the league. And I was like, you guys are so wrong. Like, why is that the first thing that you say versus actually like putting everything down on paper and looking at what really it is to offer, and then just being smarter, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like another theme for this conversation is people on Twitter being wrong, like people thinking they understand how things work. So thank you for clearing that up if we had any of those people listening today. Terri, I want to ask you, as the executive director of the Players Union, I'm wondering how you center pay equity in your leadership. And you're a lawyer too, right?
Yes, all the things. I'm a lawyer, executive director. I have the best job in the world. Absolutely. When it comes to pay equity, how you center that, how you work on that starts with our mission. If you go to the mission statement of the WNBPA, it's all about how we look to protect and serve our members, the WNBA players, how we look to make sure that their working conditions, which absolutely includes how much they are paid, are right, are proper. So if we start with our mission statement, we start with our core values that talks about investment and ensuring that players are valued properly in the workplace, well, then I know what my job is. And you've heard from Aliyah, you've heard from Alysha, and particularly what Alysha was talking about. I think girls and women in sports particularly, but it's probably true across many industries, they're made to feel grateful for what they have. And so some of what Alysha was talking about was just being grateful to have the opportunity, to compete for a roster spot, and being grateful for the opportunity to secure that roster spot and kind of stick in this league, because it's still, though we're growing, it's still the hardest league to make as a professional athlete. So this is the top of the top, the elite of the elite, right here on this podcast and across this league. So for me, I am very hyper-focused on ensuring that their working conditions and particularly pay are proper. We did a lot of work to kind of make up the ground that Alysha was talking about, going from that $50,000, and increasing what the minimum is and what the maximum player salary is. But yet You have seen this growth. I've been in this job for 9 seasons. 9 seasons. That's so cool. And year over year, they are topping themselves. And so, what we see this rookie class doing, what we've seen Aliyah do, what we've seen Alysha usher in, this momentum has just kept going. And so we got to look at pay again, and we got to make sure that they are getting, their value, and particularly in this business model that they have built.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting what you brought up, Alysha, what you brought up, Aliyah, of these kind of misconceptions, right? That women in every job get told that be grateful, be lucky you're even here. Oh, if you take that opportunity, you're actually going to make less money. You're going to lose out on other opportunities, or, Black women just don't work as hard, or they take other jobs. And we're sitting here on this call. We've got incredibly successful, decorated Black women athletes. Alysha, you've won championships with Seattle and Vegas. Aliyah, you were the unanimous 2023 WNBA Rookie of the Year, AP Rookie of the Year, yet again proving all of that wrong. I'm wondering if you both could kind of give us a little taste of what your response is to people who still believe things like that. Alysha, we'll start with you.
Honestly, for me, I don't pay it any mind. Because at the end of the day, the people that are critiquing or have something to say aren't the ones writing my checks or paying my bills. Amen. And so they hold no weight in my everyday life. As athletes, we're on Twitter, we engage with our fans, we engage with people and, different followers. So there's an element that you do see and pay attention. But at the end of the day, you just remind yourself, Bob over here with no picture and, sitting on his Twitter all day tweeting me, I'm still over here getting paid to do what I love and I'm still working and accomplishing things that they'll never be able to. So whether or not he has criticisms and he wants to make fun of it, that's cool. I'm still getting paid to do what I love. And I'm still one of the best players and one of the best players in this league. And that's something that I can hang my hat on every night. So I don't pay too much mind. Every now and then
Amen.
I chime in and throw a little shot here or there because I got time sometimes.
Have a little fun.
You got to have a little fun. But for the most part, I just ignore it. And I just continue on with the focus that we have to continue to grow this league, continue to help it be sustainable for years to come.
That's incredible. Aliyah, do you take the same approach of not my business?
Yeah, sometimes I read them for comedy purposes because yeah. Sometimes they're really funny, but to me, I look at it and I'm there's no way people can sit here and say the stuff that they say, knowing that at the end of the day, they're watching us, they're talking all this smack, but they're literally sitting down watching us play, which at the end of the day, that's we're the ones shining. At the end of the day, you're literally sitting down, thinking, oh, what can I say today? After you've already watched our game, after you've watched us have 20 and 15, after you you know what I'm saying? It's literally just insane. And sometimes I look at them wow, that's a chuckle. But I think something that I also started doing was really using my block button. I feel I honestly have perfected the use of just clicking the 3 dots at the right, and then I just click block. And I never have to see it again. I really, honestly, I just did it today.
Yes.
It's such an amazing feeling because we're out here doing our job, which is come out here and play basketball and win basketball games. And we're having fun doing it. And I feel there should be no reason why we let someone else affect that. Someone else affects our happiness coming out on this court every single day. And so I literally block the haters. That's literally what I do.
I support. More people need to use the block.
I am a fan of the block. I've been using the block feature for a long time. And I'm listen, you're right. Freedom of speech. You can say whatever you like, but you will not be saying it on my page.
Well, it's just so, like you said, I'm on our social media team here. And it's the amount of people every day in our mention, it's get a job. How do you have this much time? I don't even look at our content that much and I make it. How are you having this much time to comment on every single thing? It is, I will never truly understand that, but I am in all support of blocking anyone and everyone. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit in kind of the vein of the popularity of women's basketball and women's sports. I think if people weren't watching women's basketball and really women's sports in general before this year, they really are now. But with that kind of popularity becomes a lot of different opinions from people who do not know a thing, as we've talked about. Terri, I'm wondering if you've seen a disparity in the way that the treatment and pay of Black women players has changed in recent years. Have you seen it go up? Have you seen it go down? Is it still kind of fluctuating? Anything you've noticed?
Well, first of all, if anybody hasn't been watching women's sports over the last few years, shame on them. And they definitely better be watching now, and particularly watching the women of the W. With respect to pay, like I said, I've been in this job 9 years, and I think though there are some signs that there is hope, that there is progress, I think I still am a little frustrated and a little disappointed with what I see. And what the conversations are. And you're right, Lark, this is a league of professional women basketball players, top of the top, and largely Black and brown players. So this is a league in which pay becomes a real focal point. And, I think my source of frustration and disappointment comes from the fact that folks are still not recognizing what these women are doing on the court and off the court, and how they have really built their brands. And, for some reason, it seems as though the goalposts seem to move every time, they have achieved and they have established themselves. And suddenly that's not good enough. There needs to be more. There was a kind of an unfortunate talking point that came from the league themselves about, women can make up to, or players can make up to, I think their number was $700,000, in this league. And I was like, you know what? That's false. That's misleading. Don't do that. Let's talk about what their salaries are. Compensation opportunities to make additional money. Yeah, those exist. But when I talk about moving the goalposts and kind of changing, the metrics and changing, the way women should be valued and the way athletes should be valued, I look to that talking point and I say, shame on you for doing that, because we know what the salaries are. The max salaries right now, and yes, everybody, I've got to work on that. But the max salary right now is anywhere from $230,000 to $240,000, $250,000, right? $250,000. That's the max salary. So how do you get to $700,000? You got to negotiate a time off bonus. You got to be the MVP of the regular season. So when you think about that, how many MVPs can there be? There can only be but one. And so let's not send the message to women generally, and to Black and brown women specifically. Let's not send the message that you've got to be perfect in order to make $700,000. And not only that, there can only be one of you. Let's not do that. Let's value them properly in their salaries, the way we do for all the other industries. Let's value them in their salaries, and then show them, the additional opportunities to make more money through bonuses. Let's talk about their salary and let's get that right. So I've seen it. I'm a little frustrated by it, but it energizes me to work even harder for these women.
Good. Alysha, I saw you, kind of counting your fingers, talking about the red tape it takes. I'm wondering what do you think it'll take for Black women to be paid kind of what we're owed, certainly in sports, but I know it's applicable to Black women working everywhere.
Yeah. I was making those faces just because that's been like a really frustrating piece for me throughout this, like all the changes that I've been a part of in this league, right? And all the conversations that have been had. The league is making these statements that, yes, players can make, X amount of dollars, whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's for the 1 or 2% of the top players in this league. So that's for the players that already have endorsement deals, that already have brands, that are doing these things. But what about the rest of us that are in this middle tier? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, we don't get that opportunity. We're not making the $250,000 salary. We're making the middle salary. We don't have a lot of brands coming to us because they're coming to the best players on our teams and offering them those deals. So for me, like I have a different perspective from that viewpoint, because I'm like, it's BS, and they know it is. And that's the frustrating piece, kind of circling back to the beginning, when, we knew what the salaries were, and it's like, don't talk about it. But that's been with everything in our league. It's like, don't bring that up, because if you do, then they're going to look at our league in a bad light. And it's like, well, things keep getting swept under the rug and nothing is changing. So until we bring light to these issues, until we bring light to things that are being told that aren't the truth, nothing's going to change. There's going to be no accountability. There's going to be no pressure on them to do better. But I think that kind of just goes hand in hand with the like, be grateful, right? And you're in a league of Black women where it's like, we know we have to work 2 times as hard. We know we have to be 2 times as smart. We know we have to do above and beyond to just be considered in the same playing field. And it's like, okay, well, we don't want to like ruffle the feathers. We don't want to be that person, because when we do, we're looked at in a different way. And so that's been the part for me that has really like made me happy, is this younger generation, these young classes coming in aren't afraid to step up and speak out, aren't afraid to show up as themselves, aren't afraid to challenge status quo. And that's something that I think is what's going to help push for Black women, and particular in our league, like to be able to be paid the same, is having players like that aren't afraid, that are going to push that envelope and stand on it and not be afraid of it. And I think what you're seeing now is more brands being like, wow, there are so many more stories to tell. There are so many other amazing women in this league. Let's like tell their story. Let's show these other little girls and boys that like you can find someone that's like you and be able to aspire to be that. And so this young generation has definitely helped push that narrative to where we can, be in the same level of playing field with everyone.
What she is talking about is truly energizing for us at the staff and as the staff of the union. It is energizing for us to hear that the players want us to push and do more and go big and be bold. And Alysha is absolutely right. And what we have seen are more companies kind of coming to us and talking to us and looking to build partnerships. And they come in with terms that maybe are a little lower than what we thought, what we would expect. But because we're riding off of this energy of our members who say, go big and be bold, we're pushing them a little bit more. And we're seeing partnerships, at least with the union. We're seeing partnerships that we haven't seen in a long time. And I'm really, really proud of that. So it still gives me a little hope.
Yeah, that's energizing for sure. And on both of those points, that's a trend we're seeing nationwide too, where younger generations are saying we are going to talk about what we're getting paid. A big part of salary transparency too is only being offered what you've been paid before, right? When you apply for a job, they say, how much would you like to get paid? And if you only know what you've gotten paid, that's all you're going to ask for. So, we're doing work in states to kind of ban asking that question. To your point, Alysha, like, don't ask what let's not incrementally move up from where we've been. Let's like keep going. I know what you can do. Let's not worry about what you've been giving us so far, because that's not a productive place to start. And Aliyah, I want to go to you. I'm wondering, aside from fervently and liberally using the block button, I'm wondering how you think we as Black women can continue to fight for all of these incredible things, equal pay and just respect, without kind of getting discouraged. It can be heavy to take on this fight.
It definitely can. I feel like the biggest thing is like, don't go away. Like, we know what we deserve to make. We know what we just deserve in general. And, sometimes like, yes, you said it's easy to get discouraged, but I think if you are very passionate about how you feel about what you should be making or how you're looked at, whether that's in the media or just getting a job, like you can't shy away from like fighting that battle, because like no one else is going to fight it for us except for ourselves. And so to be confident, like, I feel like that's something that like we're used to, is like fighting. Like, as bad as that sounds, like, I feel like that's just what we do. Like, we fight no matter whose battle it is. Like, I feel like Black women are always the first one to stand up and try to defend the person next to them. And so we never get tired of fighting for someone next to us. So I feel like we can never get tired of fighting for ourselves, because at the end of the day, like, there will literally be no one else that stands up for us the way that we can and the way that we should, other than ourselves.
Such a great point.
We always like to end here with joy at National Women's Law Center. We always say for justice and for joy. So I'm wondering, to leave on a positive note, what's giving you all hope? What's giving you life right now? It can be about basketball. It can be about Black girl joy. It can be about a new sweater you just got that you love. What's your joy?
Oh, for me, I'd say it's definitely been like my family. Like, I feel like there are always people that I always go to. And I feel like even though they're not in Indiana with me, like, we're always on the phone, we're always talking. So definitely just staying connected to them no matter what.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think for me, it's twofold. My niece and nephew. So my niece just started high school. My nephew is 8. And so for them, just being of the generation that like they get to see strong women succeed and do things, and it's normal to them. And so being able to plant those seeds for them at this young age, especially, in particular, my nephew too, I think it's been really awesome. And, getting to go home and be around them and just like see how they process and pay attention to what I'm doing. I think it was really cool to witness as they've gotten older. And then the other thing for me is like seeing everyone, like in particular, my teammates and just people from the league, like getting to have their moment. Like this is something that players have worked so hard for. And even people I don't know, anybody on the Olympics, like I've been dying watching them all. I'm like, oh my, like I'm in tears. I'm a big crybaby, but like watching them win or compete and just seeing them shine in their moments. I'm like, how freaking dope is that? Like I've been cheesing ear to ear. So that's been bringing me a lot of joy too.
What about you, Terri? What's bringing you joy?
What brings me joy? I'm going to be honest with you all, and Aliyah and Alysha are going to think I'm just saying this, but this job gives me joy.
That's incredible. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Aliyah and Alysha, thank y'all. I appreciate you.
Hearsay is a Wonder Media Network production in partnership with the National Women's Law Center. It is hosted and produced by Jessica Baskerville, Lark Lewis, and Hillary Woodward. Our producers are Taylor Williamson and Abby Delk. Jenny Kaplan is our executive producer, and Maddie Foley is our editor. Show art by Andrea Sumner.
I'm white. But so, yeah.
This whole time.
I know. First you find out I'm a vegetarian. And now this.